It's 7 p.m. You're in your kitchen. She walks in. No yelling, no slamming doors, just that look, and your chest tightens before a single word is said. Then it comes. The sigh. That quiet, surgical exhale that slices straight through you. You know what it means before you even hear the words. You've failed again, though you can't remember exactly how. That's the power of the sigh. It doesn't accuse you outright. It doesn't give you anything to defend against. It just hangs there in the air like a silent verdict. And you feel yourself shrinking. You feel your spine fold, your voice soften, your thoughts scatter. You start scanning for mistakes you might have made, things you said, things you didn't say, things you could have done differently. That's the weapon no one warns you about. Disappointment without explanation. It's the most effective kind of control because it never looks like control. It looks like reason. It looks like maturity. She's not angry, she's just tired. She's not criticizing, she's just being honest. And you, trying to be the good man, the calm man, the understanding man, take the bait. You nod. You apologize. You try to fix what you don't understand. Because you think love means solving her silence. You think peace means absorbing her moods. You think being a man means being unshakable while she chips away at your edges one sigh at a time. Here's the truth, this isn't communication. It's conditioning. Every time she sighs, every time her face tightens in that quiet disapproval, it teaches you a new rule. Don't say that again. Don't do that again. Don't be that version of yourself. You start editing who you are to avoid the sound of her disappointment. You start policing your own joy because you've learned that feeling good is dangerous when she's not in the same mood. You start apologizing for simply existing in a way she doesn't approve of. And the sickest part? You think you're being noble. You think you're being patient, understanding, emotionally mature. But what you're really doing is surrendering piece by piece. Not because she asked you to, but because that sigh taught you that being yourself equals losing peace. That look taught you that standing tall equals conflict. So you shrink. You bend. You break yourself down just enough to fit into her comfort zone. That's how it begins. Not with shouting or chaos. Not with obvious cruelty. It begins with the smallest gestures. The glance, the sigh, the tone that tells you she's fine, but clearly isn't. It's death by 1,000 quiet moments. And you tell yourself it's temporary. You tell yourself she's just stressed, just tired, just going through something. But deep down, you know. You know this is a pattern, not a phase. You know you've been trained to anticipate her moods before she even feels them. You've become fluent in her disappointment. That's the tragedy most men never see coming. They think being strong means staying calm. They think being loving means being endlessly understanding. But when silence becomes punishment and calm becomes control, you're not in a relationship. You're in a slow erasure. The kind that doesn't leave bruises but leaves you hollow. The kind that makes you forget what it felt like to stand tall in your own home. The sigh is small, but the damage it does is enormous. And by the time you realize it, you're already living in pieces of yourself you barely recognize. You learned early that her mood mattered more than your plan. Decisions stopped being yours the moment you asked, "What do you think?" Your choices began to orbit her approval like planets around a sun. Promotions were weighed against dinner schedules. Hobbies were measured by how they made her feel. Friends became liabilities on a balance sheet you never agreed to keep. Everything useful in your life turned into a potential problem for her, so you started pre-clearing everything as if permission were a currency. That conditioning is quiet and relentless. It doesn't arrive with a decree. It arrives as a steady trickle of compromises until you forget what full ownership feels like. You shrink options into acceptables. You trade big dreams for small comforts that require less explanation. You stop asking, "What do I want?" and begin asking, "Will she like this?" The switch is subtle, but the cost is your direction. You develop a sixth sense for moods. You can predict the tempo of her day before she speaks. You learn which subjects ignite tension and which ones will keep the room calm. You edit your jokes, your ambitions, your timing. You preempt conflict by neutering yourself. This is not strategy, it's self-censorship. And it's exhausting. There's a psychology at work here. When one person's satisfaction becomes the metric for another's worth, responsibility shifts. You end up owning feelings that aren't yours to carry. You become a caretaker for an emotional weather system you never volunteered to study. That responsibility is unearned labor. It is unpaid overtime on your soul. The more you perform to placate, the less she values the performance. What looked like devotion becomes the new baseline. Yesterday's sacrifice is today's expected behavior. The heroics turn into checkboxes. You wake up one morning and realize your generosity is no longer noticed. It's invisible because it's assumed. That erases gratitude and replaces it with entitlement. You start believing that keeping her content is the ultimate achievement of manhood. You confuse appeasement with strength. You call silence patience, and you applaud your own restraint. But there's nothing brave about erasing yourself to avoid someone else's friction. Bravery looks different. It chooses truth over comfort, boundaries over shrinking. Kids see this. They learn early what stability looks like, not from lessons but from patterns. When a father constantly defers, sons internalize submission as virtue. Daughters learn that demands can bend a man until he breaks. That's how cycles repeat. Modeled behavior breeds the next generation's default. You're not just negotiating a relationship. You're scripting examples for children who study you more than you know. The solution is straightforward and brutally practical. Stop treating her mood as the job description for your life. Start making decisions that reflect your priorities. Practice small acts of autonomy and notice how the world rearranges around them. Say yes to an interest without asking if it inconveniences her. Choose a late meeting once and watch what happens. It's not rebellion, it's recalibration. This isn't about ignoring her feelings. It's about refusing to make them your burden. Partners share life, they don't outsource identity. Reclaiming your voice doesn't mean silencing hers. It means both of you get to live unedited lives that intersect rather than one life constantly revising itself for the comfort of the other. That's partnership. That's dignity. That's how men stop being fixes and start being themselves. You show up early, work late, fix what breaks, calm the household, and it all becomes invisible. You clean, cook, pay bills, and the thank yous dry up because the standard shifts to what's owed. Effort morphs into baseline and baseline is not rewarded. It becomes the background hum of a life someone assumes you're contractually obliged to run. When kindness slides into duty, it loses its warmth. This system has rules you never agreed to. Do more and your margin disappears. Sacrifice becomes the new normal. Every extra hour you put in raises the floor for tomorrow's expectations. A thoughtful gesture is recoded as the starting level of care. You're measured not by the gesture but by how often you repeat it. Comparison is the lever they use. Not with you, with an imaginary standard. Neighbors, friends, curated feeds. Your good becomes the neighbor's, not quite enough. A promotion becomes the reason you must be more present. A kind word is parsed for motive. Gratitude evaporates because appreciation is replaced by entitlement. People forget that appreciation is a gift. They start treating it like currency others owe them. Perks become dues. If you provide, you must provide more. Step back and you're cold. Step up and it's insufficient. You're trapped in a loop where over-delivering is the only option. Every deliverable turns into another deadline. There's no recognition, only escalation. You begin to treat gestures like investments you must maintain. Romance becomes scheduled labor. Surprise becomes a planned expense. Doing the right thing is replaced by doing what prevents complaint. Your generosity becomes transactional, and once transactional, it loses meaning. The tone of conversation shifts. You should replace his "thank you." Why didn't you replace his "that was great"? Dialogue becomes audit. Compliments are rare, critiques are frequent. You defend the hours on your time card instead of enjoying your life. Boundaries are framed as selfishness. Refusing to be endlessly available is labeled indifference. Ask for a break and you're dismissed as ungrateful. Clarify the partnership and you're painted as the problem. So you shrink because shrinking avoids being the villain in a script you didn't write. Fixing this is simple math. Name what you give. Say when it's sufficient. Stop padding the checklist without reciprocity. If you keep producing value without recognition, you train the system to demand more. Withdraw the invisible overtime. Stop treating yourself like an always-on supply line. There is dignity in measured generosity. Give because you choose to, not because the culture of the home expects it. Notice what returns when effort is not taken for granted. When you stop volunteering beyond reason, people notice. When appreciation comes back, it's because you stopped subsidizing expectations. This isn't about stinginess. It's about balance. It's about turning invisible labor into visible contribution. It's about being a partner whose efforts are recognized, not a staffer who merely did his job. And when that shift happens, you remember what it feels like to be respected in your own house. You teach people how to treat you by what you allow. Set clear standards and enforce them. Celebrate small reciprocations. Reclaim evenings, refuse unpaid emotional labor, and expect courtesy in return. Small recalibrations compound. Respect begets respect. Watch the atmosphere shift when you stop being the invisible foundation and become a visible partner. She asks where you were and it lands like an accusation. Not a curiosity, an audit. That casual question carries an underlying demand. Prove you belong to her while you were away. The tone is small but it tightens the room. You start to feel watched even when nobody is looking. Every move is potentially suspicious. Every pause is a blank that must be filled with explanation. This kind of attention dresses itself up as care. It says it's about safety, about connection, about being involved. But its real function is control. It trains you to report in, to account for minutes and choices, to translate private time into public record. You grow defensive instead of relaxed. Transparency becomes a leash. The next thing you know, spontaneity dies. You think twice before accepting an invite because you'll have to answer for it later. Freedom gets filtered through a second opinion. There's a subtle architecture to it. Questions that start casual escalate into patterns of monitoring. Text checking location become regularity. Who is that? Becomes a habit instead of a boundary. Your social calendar gets cross-referenced with her anxieties. Privacy erodes by degrees. At first you hand over your phone to show there's nothing to hide. Later you notice you've been trained to open it before she asks. Compliance replaces choice. You learn the language of defense. You draft explanations in your head before you walk through the door. You rehearse replies for scenarios that should never require rehearsal. Innocent explanations become scripts. That's exhausting. It shifts energy from living to proving. Life turns into an ongoing justification. What is framed as concern often shuts down parts of you. Hobbies that require absence are shelved. Friendships that need irregular hours are abandoned. Professional chances that demand travel are muted. The cost is cumulative. Each concession shrinks your world a little more until your safe zone is inside her approval window. You stop testing limits because tests are met with alarms. Curiosity becomes negotiable. Manipulation loves normal routines. It thrives on small compromises passed off as mutual care. When she frames a demand as protection, you accept it because you don't want her worried. You don't see that the worry is being manufactured to justify control. You don't notice that the more you soothe it, the louder it becomes. Worry grows like a weed, it spreads when watered. This isn't merely about rules. It's about who gets to set them. A partnership builds rules together. Surveillance creates rules one person enforces without negotiation. That's asymmetry. It's a power imbalance disguised as attentiveness. You consider it love because love uses soft language. You don't recognize it as domination because domination is gentle at first. Reclaiming your life begins with small refusals. Keep a plan unshared. Answer when you choose to answer. Keep a day for yourself without explanation. Those acts feel minor until they are not. Each private hour reclaimed is a recalibration of power. You'll find that the demand for constant accounting is partly performative. If you stop performing, the script loses its authority. Boundaries are not punishments. They are statements of identity. Saying, "I'll tell you what I want to tell you," is not cruelty, it's clarity. Saying no to hourly check-ins is not withdrawal, it's preservation. When you stop living under surveillance, you resume making decisions from your center instead of someone else's fear. Control dressed as care is persuasive because it appeals to empathy. It demands the language of love to survive. Refuse to let affection be weaponized. Hold your time sacred. Guard your choices. Live with accountability, not surrender. Arguments stop being conversations and start being traps. What should be a disagreement becomes a choreographed fight where the outcome is always the same. You lose ground. She pulls the thread she knows will unravel you. She presses the button that makes your mouth go soft and your brain rush to apologize before you even understand what you did. The point is never to fix anything. The point is to control the tempo of your reactions so you're predictable, frail, and easy to manage. She knows which words make you stumble. She knows the sentence that will make you cave. She knows the memory you feel shame about and she stores it like ammunition. Then she waits. When you step on that old bruise, she lights up the victimhood and you suddenly need to explain yourself for being tired, for being human, for being imperfect. You are lured into defense, and defense is the battlefield she wins by attrition. Conversations loop. You say something reasonable and she rewrites your intention into malice. You apologize and she asks for proof. You stand up for yourself and she labels you angry. Your emotions are weaponized against you. There is no truth in the exchange, only leverage. The goal is to keep you reactive so you never have the energy left to change the rules of engagement. She invites escalation because escalation keeps you off balance. When you react, she points to your reaction as evidence that you're the problem. When you don't react, she accuses you of being distant and cold. Either way, she owns the narrative. She flips the script to make her behavior justified and your response indefensible. You end up apologizing for the very instinct that keeps you alive. This is emotional guerrilla warfare. Small, repeated strikes designed to weaken your resolve. Tiny humiliations build up into a larger erosion of confidence. A casual insult today becomes a pattern tomorrow. A public jab becomes something you accept in private because you'd rather smooth things over than make a scene. That smoothing is the slow bleed. There is a taxonomy of tactics. The gaslight. She tells you what happened wasn't what you remember until you doubt your own mind. The silent treatment. She disappears emotionally to punish you and then returns when you chase. The projection. She accuses you of shortcomings she's exhibiting. The victim play. She marshals sympathy and positions you as the aggressor. Learn the names and you stop mistaking cruelty for confusion. You are trained to exhaust yourself trying to fix the unfixable. You look for logic in illogic. You offer solutions to problems that aren't problems, only mirrors that reflect her current appetite for drama. That's the trap. Your attention is a resource and she learns to direct it where it benefits her. Over time, your energy is bankrolled into her emotional economy. Refuse to play. The first move is to stop participating in the ritual. When she throws a provocation, don't supply fuel. Answer once, calmly, without chasing. Set a limit, then enforce it. If the argument becomes about scoring points, walk away and return only to resolve, not to relitigate. You reclaim authority by choosing when to engage, not by matching her tempo. Replace reactivity with structure. Agree on rules for conflict. Timeouts, a single issue per conversation, no past cataloging. Demand clarity. Ask, what outcome do you want? And refuse to be pulled into dramatics that have no resolution. Practice detachment without cruelty. Detachment is a boundary, it is not indifference. Don't confuse strength with silence. Strength is consistency. Strength is refusing to let someone else define your value through manipulation. When you hold steady, the pattern phrase. If she wants drama, let her have it alone. If she wants partnership, she will learn that conflict must aim for repair rather than ruin. Your job is not to absorb the emotional blows. Your job is to insist on conversations that build rather than break. You show your vulnerability and it's dismissed as weakness. You harden and it's called indifference. You become accommodating and it's labeled complacency. You try different versions of yourself and none fit. The expectation slides under your feet while you rearrange your life to match a moving outline. This is how the chase starts. Solve one complaint and you wake to a new one. Fix a pattern and another emerges. It's not accidental, it's a system designed to keep you reaching. The payoff is unpredictable, the criticism is constant. That combination is the perfect lever to keep you trying. You run in place. Wins are rebranded as inconveniences. Promotions become explanations for why you'll be away more. A thoughtful gesture becomes tomorrow's baseline and yesterday's grace. Momentum morphs into obligation when the reward for effort is more demand. You stop living for meaning and begin living for reactions. Decisions are less about desire than about whether they will trigger the next set of corrections. You craft a version of yourself that earns the least friction possible. That persona is polished and fragile. It collapses the moment stress returns. There's a calculated cruelty to shifting standards. It hands judgment to whoever controls the definition. When the definition constantly changes, you can't win on merit because the metric is unstable. That breeds chronic self-doubt. You measure yourself against a horizon that keeps receding. The mental cost is stealthy. Anxiety about what will be required tomorrow seeps into your days. You stop celebrating because celebration feels provisional. You clutch pleasant moments like contraband, expecting them to be reinterpreted. Joy becomes something you permit yourself in short doses before the next critique arrives. Children watch this play out and learn the script. Boys see self-erasure as honor. Girls see demands bending others as power. The behavior replicates without drama, quietly, effectively. Resentment grows in that climate because the small, repeated disappointments accumulate until they feel massive. You can refuse the script. Start by demanding clarity. When an expectation arrives, ask for specifics. If what's asked of you is vague, call it out. Vague demands are tools to keep you malleable. Specific requests can be negotiated. Ambiguous ones are weapons. Anchor your worth in actions you choose, not in applause. Decide which standards you will meet because they align with your values. Let praise be a bonus, not the ledger by which you balance your life. When you are guided by your internal compass, external resets have less sway. Practice consistent behavior. Make agreements and fulfill them. Predictability from you undermines attempts to reframe your character on a whim. Reliable behavior builds a reputation that random complaints can't easily erase. Consistency is a subtle countermeasure to manipulation. Apply consequence with calm resolve. If demands morph into control, respond with proportional limits. Boundaries are not punitive. They are clarifying statements about who you are. When you enforce them, you teach others how to engage with you. Without consequence, shifting standards become the norm. There is strength in steadiness. A partner who values you will prefer clear expectations to power plays. If someone cannot hold up reasonable terms, they reveal their aim was dominance, not partnership. When you stop adjusting to every whim, life aligns with priorities you set, not the ones set for you. The moment hits like a wrong song on the radio, a tiny interruption that rewrites everything. You walk through the door with good news and it's met with a complaint about logistics. You bring up a win and it's reframed as inconvenience. It doesn't explode, it just quietly redirects the conversation toward how your success makes her life harder. That twist lands heavier than any shout because it undercuts your joy before you can process it. It starts as a pattern of small erasures. A partner's warmth that once felt mutual now arrives on a schedule you didn't set. Invitations from friends dwindle because they're too much trouble. Invitations to grow at work are softened into questions about whether you're putting us first. Piece by piece, the map of your life is redrawn without your pen. You notice the changes not all at once, but when you compare your past self to the man writing checks for someone else's comfort. Clarity comes in blunt moments. Maybe it's a casual remark about how your promotion will keep you away, instead of pride. Maybe it's when you skip a plan with your mate and are accused of being distant rather than being honest. Maybe it's watching an old friend get a text last minute while your own messages wait. The common thread is this: your ambitions, pleasures, and time are filtered through how they affect someone else, and that filter keeps getting darker. That awakening can feel terrifying because it forces a ledger. You begin to inventory what you've given and what you've actually received. The math is ugly. You catalog nights missed, conversations trimmed, interests abandoned. You tally apologies you didn't owe and gratitude you never got. The list isn't dramatic on paper, but it accumulates into a kind of suffocation you can't ignore. Once you see the pattern, denial becomes an optional step. Some men double down, polishing themselves into smaller versions designed to avoid friction. Others feel a cold clarity. The relationship has structural issues, not temporary ones. Either way, the wake-up forces a decision. Do you keep subsidizing someone else's emotional economy, or do you redirect resources to yourself? That pivot starts small. You test a boundary with a modest choice. A night out, a delayed reply, a hobby resurrected. The reactions vary. Some partners step up and adjust. Others escalate to regain control. Both responses are telling. If someone can't handle your small freedoms, they won't handle your full self. If they can, you've found room to breathe together. This is also a social moment. You'll notice who stays and who leaves. Friends who valued you for convenience may recede. That hurts, but it clarifies loyalty. Your real allies are the ones who cheer your wins without recalculating their cost. They don't make your growth a threat. Kids absorb this recalibration. When you choose dignity over self-erasure, you model a healthier script. Sons learn restraint that isn't servitude. Daughters learn strength that isn't domination. The example you set becomes a quiet curriculum for what relationships should and shouldn't be. Wake-up moments demand accountability. That means naming the pattern aloud, setting limits, and following through. It means returning to instincts that used to guide you before constant second-guessing. It means rehearsing small acts of self-possession until they become muscle memory. The truth is plain: clarity is not cruelty. Calling out what's been happening is not punishment, it's disclosure. When you stop negotiating with erosion, you discover whether the partnership was mutual or merely convenient. Either outcome is a step toward a life that fits you, not one that slowly fits you out. This is not permission to become cruel. It is permission to be sane. You don't need a narrative that paints you as the villain for wanting dignity. Boundaries are practical tools, not drama. Set them plainly. Say what you will accept and what you won't. Mean it. Enforce it. Start with small actions and treat them as non-negotiable. Keep one evening a week for yourself and don't apologize for it. Reclaim a hobby that doesn't require her blessing. Say yes to a friend's invite without clearing it first. Watch how tiny freedoms rewire courage. They accumulate faster than excuses. Make requests instead of waiting for permission. Ask for support in clear terms. If you want encouragement when you take risks, say so. If you need space after work, name it. Don't dress needs in justification. Speak them like appointments on your calendar, factual and unembellished. People respond to clarity more than they do to pleading. Don't mistake firmness for pettiness. The point is not to score points. The point is to stop subsidizing someone else's emotional imbalance. When you refuse to submerge your priorities under another person's demands, you test whether the relationship is reciprocal. Reciprocity is a simple barometer. Give and receive roughly equal care over time. If the scale tilts too far one way, fix it or walk. Teach by action. Demonstrate limits with consistency. If a boundary is crossed, respond predictably. A single, calm consequence is more powerful than 1,000 emotional lectures. Follow through without theatrics. People learn faster from applied logic than from repeated arguments. Your behavior becomes the curriculum. Protect your time like a scarce resource because it is. Time spent proving yourself is time stolen from projects, friendships, and recovery. Reinvest those stolen minutes into the life you want to build. Start a project that excites you. Schedule a morning run. Read something challenging. Those small commitments restore identity. They remind you who you were before the erosion began. Don't negotiate your value away to avoid conflict. Compromise is healthy when it doesn't cost your center. Compromising on core needs is capitulation. Distinguish between flexible preferences and foundational requirements. Keep the latter guarded. You'll feel less resentful and more authentic. Talk like an adult. Use statements that begin with facts, not accusations. I need lands better than you always. Avoid historical inventories in arguments. Address the present with clear outcomes. What change you want and when you expect to see it. Ask for a timeline. Ask for accountability. People appreciate structured conversations because they remove the fog of emotional warfare. Expect resistance. Change triggers defense. When she escalates, stay steady. Escalation is a test, not a verdict. Your calmness strips the test of power. If escalation persists, escalate your boundary proportionally. Calmly step away, delay a conversation, or pause a privilege. Do it without dramatics. Do it without apology. Finally, remember that choosing yourself is a responsibility, not an indulgence. It's the adult thing to do. It teaches others how to treat you, and it models resilience for anyone watching. You will not win every fight. You will, however, stop losing yourself. That is enough. If this hit you somewhere deep, that quiet place where truth lives, don't just scroll past it. Hit subscribe. Because this isn't about hate, it's about awakening. It's about remembering who you are before the world, or a woman, convinced you to forget. Welcome back to yourself.